It's your year-end legal checklist. Your year-end legal checklist for podcasters is here. Hello, everybody. The end of the year is almost here, and I want to know, are you legally ready for 2025? Don't let little oversights turn into big problems. On this episode of Legit Podcast Pro, I am sharing my year-end legal checklist for podcasters that'll help you protect your show and set yourself up for success in the new year. So let's just jump right in and get started. Welcome back to Legit Podcast Pro. I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, and I'm here to help you navigate the legal and business side of podcasting. Whether you're just starting out or growing your show, we've got you covered with practical advice and tips that'll keep your podcast legit. First off, before we get started, I just want to let you know we have a downloadable copy of the checklist I'll be talking about today. You can get it for free just by visiting gordonfiremark.com/year-end checklist. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's gordonfiremark.com/year-end checklist. So let's dive right into this checklist for podcasters, because taking time to address these kinds of tasks now will save you stress and set the stage for a successful year in 2025. So, number one, first off, let's take a look at your contracts. Do you have guest release forms for all your episodes? If not, you want to follow up. Now, I'm not saying necessarily go back and get release forms from everybody who's been on the show, but certainly if there are cornerstone episodes, that might make sense. And more importantly, get it in order and set up now for the future. So going forward, you've got that guest release taken care of. You can get a free guest release at podcastrelease.com. And check your sponsorship agreements. Have all the deliverables been met? Are there opportunities to renew or renegotiate the terms? Review the contracts with your team, including your editors and freelancers, and update the terms wherever that might be necessary. Item number 2 on the checklist is to check your copyright and licensing. Make sure that you are using the music, the sound effects, the third-party content in the show with the proper licenses. And double check that if you're relying on fair use for your copyrighted material, make sure you've got the documentation of having done some analysis, that you've gone through the 4 factors so you can show good faith if there is ever a problem or an accusation. Next up, make sure that your branding is properly protected. Is your podcast's title, name, logo, or tagline trademarked? Well, if not, this is a great time to start that process. Consistent branding across platforms really is essential to building a recognizable podcast and a brand and a business. Now, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has announced a price increase on all of their trademark registration filings starting this January. So now is the best time to get your registration started. You can save a few bucks by diving in before the end of the year. And number 4, you should look at your privacy policy. If you collect listener emails or data for any reason at all, you have to comply with privacy regulations. Here in California, we have the CCPA, the Child Consumer Privacy Act, I think it is. And in the rest of the world, we also have to think about the GDPR. If you're collecting information from folks in Europe, GDPR is important as well. So make sure that your website privacy policy is up to date, reflects the current standards, and properly covers you so you don't find yourself in hot water later on. Number 5, review all income and expenses. Make sure you're doing accurate reporting for tax purposes. Double check your sponsorship and affiliate income and payments, and make sure that you're properly reporting things. For podcasters here in the United States, that means sending out 1099s for any contractor that you pay more than $600 in the calendar year, and W-2s for any employees. But listen, if you use virtual overseas help, you may not need to do 1099s or W-2s, so that's something you'll want to check in with your tax advisor if you can, or do a little research on the web. Number 6 is to renew your business licenses and registrations. If you don't have a formal business structure already, consider setting up an LLC to streamline your banking, your taxes, your record keeping in 2025. And if you do already have a business entity like an LLC or a corporation, make sure your filings and permits are up to date. And file your beneficial ownership information report before year's end in order to avoid what are some really onerous and significant penalties. Now, I am still recommending this, even though you may have heard earlier this week, a court in Texas issued a nationwide injunction against enforcing these beneficial ownership information reporting requirements, the BOI report. This is all part of the Corporate Transparency Act that went into effect earlier this year. But it's a sure thing that this injunction against the enforcement of this BOI report law will be appealed. So it could be lifted before the deadline, which is December 31st. So my thinking is your best move is just get this filed anyway. I think it's going to be upheld at some point, and it makes sense to get it filed. Now, if you've got some important privacy concerns or something, talk to me or your lawyer, any lawyer that you can consult who's knowledgeable about this, and we can figure out a strategy. Number 7, enforce your intellectual property rights. Be sure you're checking periodically to make sure you identify any unauthorized use of your content or your branding, and set alerts for ongoing monitoring. Google lets you set those kinds of alerts. It's very easy. There are other services out there. And if there is an infringement, it's really important that you take some action right away, because otherwise you could find yourself losing rights inadvertently just because you sat on your hands for too long. So be sure you're checking in, and if you see an infringement, talk to a lawyer right away. Shouldn't cost anything to have a quick consultation, and it's worth protecting your stuff. Number 8, reassess your insurance needs. Does your coverage match your podcast's growth and potential? If you have expanded things, it may be time for an update. We're going to be creating an episode soon that'll talk more specifically about the various kinds of insurance that creators need to consider, so stay tuned for that. And number 9 is to plan for 2025. Draft updated templates for your contracts, or get the updated templates. Schedule upcoming episodes. Ensure that your collaborations have agreements in place. And you can find the kinds of agreements you need over at podcastlawforms.com. So head on over there and check that out. Number 10 is to back up your content. It's important that we securely back up our episodes and our artwork, and that we take a look at our hosting agreements to make sure that everything meets our needs. The archive of content that you have is valuable, so it's really wise to make sure that it's living in at least a couple of places. My personal strategy is that I have it backed up on a removable hard drive here in my studio. I also have it in the cloud in a Google Drive, secure folder on Google Drive, and it lives on my hosting service as well. So if I ever need to go back and grab one of these episodes or do something and something has gone wrong, I will have a backup somewhere that I can find and put my hands on. Number 11, an FTC compliance check. Do you have sponsored episodes? Do you have pay-to-play episodes where the guest has paid you? Are you asked for, and do you ever give endorsements in your show? Do you recommend products or services or books by your author guests and things like that? Do you use affiliate links to market and promote products? You want to make sure that you check that all of the necessary disclosures that you're doing meet FTC guidelines and that you're not overlooking something important. Number 12 relates to listener engagement and consent. Be sure you review all the opt-ins for your newsletters and data collection. Make sure you're complying. Update the terms of service, terms of use, and disclaimers on your podcast websites. And if the focus of things has shifted, it may make sense to be a little proactive about encouraging consent and things like that. And here's a bonus for you. You can do all of the legal stuff that I've described here pretty much by yourself. You can check out my flagship course and template bundle where we walk you through step by step each of the processes for forming your business entity, registering that BOI report, registering your trademarks and copyrights, making solid contracts with your team and with your advertisers and sponsors. So check out easylegalforpodcasters.com because it's a simple, affordable way to get your podcast to be really totally legit. And right now, we're running a special promotion this week as this episode goes live. So you can check it all out at easylegalforpodcasters.com. Mario just reached out to me with a comment on LinkedIn and said, what about offsite, like a safety deposit box at a bank or UPS or something like that? Yeah, that's a great idea to periodically rotate through a set of maybe removable hard drives that you store at least one of them off-site at any given time so that your content is somewhere safe in case you have a fire or some other kind of a disaster. In any event, that's your year-end legal checklist for podcasters. So start checking off these tasks now so you can head into 2025 stress-free and ready to grow. And if you need any help, come on over to podcastlawforms.com for my lawyer-generated templates, or contact me directly for personalized support. And don't forget to check out Easy Legal for Podcasters. One more time, you can get the checklist we've just gone through as a download by visiting gordonfiremark.com/year-end checklist, all one word, year-end checklist. And that's going to do it for this episode. I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, thanking you for being with me on this episode of Legit Podcast Pro, and I'll see you again in about a week. Have a great week.